like all over there and going crazy. And you're like, I'm right there, and that's not true. And so like you can certainly use social, you can use it to subvert things too. But generally, I think crowdsourcing information does give better information.
But then you can respond to that if you're there and correct the misinformation, right?
Yeah. So like someone did research on Wikipedia versus like old school encyclopedias and like how correct they were. Wikipedia had 10 times less errors than traditional encyclopedias. Which is pretty crazy, but crowdsourcing knowledge can be really effective. Kind of why we all believe in social movements.
And the other thing is, in addition, even though I'm being harsh on mainstream media, what it also does is it forces them to be more honest and more accountable, to them. And so there's a check and balance of the mainstream media. And instead of the mainstream media being a megaphone for the government, they're now also being a check and balance perhaps for government and corporations. In themselves are corporations.
I definitely agree. I mean, my whole research was on the ways that people are building participatory media and like using social media because the mainstream media is so unaccountable. But just like, I want to challenge them, social media is not perfect, our movement is not perfect either. Like, we can get things wrong too. But generally, we do get a lot less wrong than the mainstream media.
So I know some new people came in. I would love to, if you can introduce your name, where you're from, what interests you have in social media.
Hi, I'm Autumn. I'm from Manchester. I think social media, while it has its problems, has by and large made the world better. And I love to learn ways to use it.
I'm William Kostrick, also in from Manchester, and I spend an inordinate amount of time on Facebook, but I've never used Twitter, so I guess I may have missed some of that part of the presentation. But I know I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, or I don't know how other people feel about it, but I feel like Facebook has already peaked and is on its way down, and we just don't know what the next thing is yet. But I really feel like they've already crested, and so we're looking for the next thing.
I'm Garrett. I'm from Concord, New Hampshire. I live in Keene now, and I blog at freeconcord.org and freekeene.com, write articles, make videos.
So my name is Yoni again, doing a quick presentation with.
I'm Emily Reynolds.
So this was an example, like. Over here with the New York Times and Social Media Caucus, people took a screenshot of the first article from the Brooklyn Bridge arrest when 700 people were arrested October 1st, 2011. And they screenshotted it the second time, showing a completely different story. And, I know the journalist Colin Moynihan, he's actually a pretty fair guy, but like, this is not in control. He wrote this, but like his editors-in-chief, changed it probably and requested. Please, if you go back up to the picture. So over here you see like it only takes 20 minutes, and it's 7:10, and like sure it's easy to Photoshop images perhaps, but many people have independently confirmed this, and like that's the power of social media to be a check and balance of government and corporations and other entities.
Which is what radical press has been doing forever. I mean, not just social media. I mean, people have been doing this with papers, and the point of radical media is both, well, we actually have a lot of followers now, but also to keep mainstream media accountable.
I mean, I personally am not the biggest fan of Twitter and Facebook. I mean, neither of them were made for activists. However, because they're the most popular platforms, that's why I think it's important for us to understand it and perhaps incorporate it how we see fit.
I don't know, I would love Twitter.
So,
to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Building an audience.
So building an audience,
What's
this
that?
is how we're going to...
Is there another social network that you preferred over those two? Or are you just saying you just, like social networks in general are your preference, or?
I think like, well, this really goes back to like the late 1990s to early 2000s. You had the diaspora movement, which was the purest, most radical social networking site possible. And this happened during an age when like blogs were taking a boom, particularly after 9/11, because I mean, mainstream media televisions were not sufficient to reconnect people to their loved ones, And so that's like really the birth of blogging. It came out from a need for people to be able to individually connect on a wider internet together and crowdsource, problems and solve them together. So there might be, but like I don't even look into that because unless it's going to possibly set the new trend, it's not really interesting.
Yeah.
And so like MySpace eventually went down, and Facebook might be on its path of destruction. I don't see that happening yet, but
Yeah.
it may very well be, and it's important for us to be flexible and move. If Facebook changes too many times, I think it might piss off enough audience.
Probably.
Yeah. Oh, May 31st, I heard there's going to be a quit Facebook day. I'll Google
Yeah,
that, I don't know. I just saw that right before I came in here, like a couple days ago.
I mean, for me, like, as someone who's trying to make dynamic changes, I think it determines if other people quit it or not. But like, I don't think any of us in this room should be the first one to quit or Twitter or Facebook. Even though there's a lot of problems with Facebook. It's
Well, some people just drop out for a day or a
Oh, yeah,
week or a
definitely.
month, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it might
Get a
be.
life.
Yeah, right.
And then they get sucked back in.
Though it is important, especially on Facebook, since most people's are not anonymous, like the CIA is very heavily funded in Facebook. And
Yeah.
like that's really important to know.
Anytime there's a labor action, you have so many like accounts that were made just the day before, and you call sketch. It's like the Facebook scabs, essentially.
Yeah.
So building an audience, I gave like 3 ingredients for like what is going to make a successful Twitter rupture. Quality tweets. What was the second one? Was quality
tweets, an audience, and
Yeah, building an audience. Oh, that's what we're up to.
yes.
So building an
And
audience.
strategy, media
Actually, we need
strategy.
to go down then. But I'll just quote this again. So building an audience, there's multiple ways depending on what your campaign is about. If you're a part of a union campaign, you already have your audience. It's a very well-defined campaign. Now you're looking to reach out and expand to allies. But that means, because social media is social, that means getting your core activists, your core union members involved, engaging, tweeting out, etc. And that means on the promotional materials you put out there, putting the hashtags out there, make it very intentional. And it means, having signs at events, perhaps with a banner of the tweet hashtag that you're going to have. You see that at a lot of debates, for example, in CNN debates that have the hashtag in the background, mayoral debates, or something, or like debates 2012, etc.
I'm not gonna forget you.
Is it good? Next. So Uranon News. This account I think is really notable for several reasons. Does everyone know what Anonymous is? It's basically a hacktivist organization and decentralized cells. There is no such thing as an official Anon account. Any account can declare itself to be an Anon account. But Uranon News has 1.1 million followers, and I personally would vouch for them that they posted really reliable, accurate, awesome information. And so on April 15th, this was a day or two after the Boston bombings, they've gained at least 100,000 followers, so increasing 10%. This is by no means an easy feat to do. Like my Occupy account has just 140,000 followers in total, and that in itself is already a lot. But the reason they gained so many followers is because they were the only source that was posting credible information at a very rapid pace. They were live tweeting the police scanners that were out there when mainstream media was asked not to report them. Same thing happened with Chris Dorner, which was actually much easier for mainstream media to shut down. The press conference, journalists had to stop retweeting, and I mean, from my personal perspective, I think there are like journalistic integrities, which is, to keep the government and institutions in check, and by doing so with transparency. And I talked earlier about CNN and New York Post. They completely bamboozled. And
Young, I got a quick question. On Uranon News, somebody had to open that account, right? But did they just give the logon info to 100 different people or something? How do they?
So as far as the masses should be concerned, we don't know, and
Yeah.
that shouldn't. I happen to know some of the people involved. I think it's
Yeah.
like 3 very active folks who are they're like one of the few armchair activists I have a lot of respect for. Sitting behind a screen all day and mixing and editing videos and scanning like what's going on online.
Yeah, but that would also be part of your media strategy. Like you can make these accounts more participatory. Like Occupy Wall Street's, I don't have that handle account, but you can set it up so that your account retweets things, so that even if I don't have that handle necessarily, which I think these major accounts should be publicly known, but that's my opinion. But you can have other accounts push it out, and so if you like what someone's posting and you agree with most of their stuff, you can donate your account to that.
And so,
I also don't really like the idea of a leaders movement when that's not true.
right.
Like, I think these people should be publicly acknowledged, but there's also security issues with that.
Right.
It's a trust issue.
It's definitely true. Like it's, you know, if it was everyone's a leader, then that would mean that everyone should have access to the account. But the truth is, we don't. I mean, there are security and trust issues, trust accountability issues, as well as like someone not to. You know, if someone is posting a lot of really bad tweets, that can hurt the account because many people will unfollow. They'll feel like they're being barraged with spam.
Okay.
And so Your Non-News has been really good about retweeting people, giving credit to people, and so it's very participatory.
Yeah.
But only a few people have direct access to that account. We'll discuss some tools, like you could either share the passwords. I don't think that's a bad thing, since if you're going to trust each other, you might as well have that.
To a small trusted group, right?
Yeah.
So- but you could also give them tips by just sending it to them.
Yeah, tweeting and then like tagging them, and that's how it works. Like, I usually don't tag them, I mean direct message them, and I just, you know, put a tweet out there, and I think it's something that they would be interested in. They have a hashtag themselves, YAN, stands for Your Non-News.
What's up, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, on the Occupy New England Twitter, I was trying to do a plug for the event. Yeah, and I saw, right, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and so, Occupy Wall Street, one of the accounts, I don't know if it was the one with the fist or the one with the dancer on the pole. Yeah, but, and it said, if you just put re-T and then tag us, we'll try to retweet this. Do it, and wait, and another day goes by, nothing happens. And I mean, they're not even following us. And the thing is, we're a regional occupation, pretty much the only regional occupation left. And not only are they not following us, they don't really communicate with us at all. So it's like, why is everything so centered on New York when we have like 23 million people in the region and plenty of active activists in the Occupy movement here. So that's my little rant.
I also have some accountability issues with New York that I like. But yeah, I think that's a really critical discussion, I think, for our movement around media and our strategy, because like resources definitely are centralized in the movement, but also social capital is really important to a movement. Like when we say we're a leaderless movement, that's just not true. It's just like, you know, all my ethnographic research says that's not true, and the reason that a lot of previous movements had leaders or whatever was because they were delegated and they were voted and people trusted them and they were accountable, but that's also a difference of strategy, you know.
There's a really great article from this feminist in the 70s, Joe Freeman, The Tyranny of Structuralness. So before the internet existed, she already had like the philosophical framework of, you know, just the problem, this notion of like leaderness. And I mean, technologically, it does make it more easy to be participatory, which is good, but there are still leaders.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a strategy for our movement, and we're going to talk about strategy. And I mostly studied historical research, and Yoni's more a tactician, so I can certainly speak a lot more into historical analysis and radical analysis.
So again, you know, my point over here about mentioning Your Non-News is, while it's not very easy to replicate, and you know, I'm trying to replicate that, gain those followers, and not doing a very good job of that. But they are a very valuable partner in your struggle, and it's really important for you to identify a list of influential people, people who would be, whether it's you know, interested in the work you're doing, whether it's large accounts like, you know, within the unions. AFT account is very small, but Randy Weingarten, the head of the AFT, she has a very large account, so you can prioritize there. And you know, journalists are very helpful because they might have a small following of a few thousand people, but when they see the content you're doing, they can make a news article, and that news article has a much bigger reach of several hundred thousands of people in the newspapers. You know, Alternate, Salon, The Nation, all these like, I guess, alternative newspapers, I would call them.
Also, a good way to kind of build those connections on Twitter is on Fridays, every single Friday, there's Follow Friday. And the hashtag is FF, and you just use those 2 characters, FF, and then you post like all the people you think are awesome, and like all, like, you know, I'm in the climate movement, and so I'll post like a few different Twitter accounts that are really small, and so you can build those kind of connections to people.
And when you're looking at like hashtags, you could also look at like hashtags that are confined to your network only. So I don't trust the Follow Friday of everyone on the internet. I'll get mostly like music celebrities, which I don't care about. But you know, I trust my activist network, and then when I follow them, then they're included, and then the next week I can grow and grow. And I get a really interesting list of people. I'm really proud. I would love to just publish my list of people I follow. Really cool people.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to also like use your influence to promote other people who don't have as much of a voice, but say a lot of really relevant, interesting things. So I try not to follow Friday like big accounts, but rather small accounts of people that are really cool. People new to Twitter, or just through the different systems of oppression in our society, in our capitalist society, we can promote those voices.
We can time it all discussing.
Yes. So over here I chose kind of the 4 different strategies, and over here are the 4 kind of like, I think, scenarios that every person would go through very quickly. Code Pink Thundercat. So I'm just going to use examples because it's a lot easier to discuss that than going through a theoretical kind of description. Thunderclap is a really awesome tool to promote a very specific campaign for a very specific time. It's also, I think, has the least impact, but it's also easy to do.